If you could time travel to any historical event or era, what would you choose and what would you hope to witness or change?
Oh, it's funny. Whenever I talk about when I've had this conversation about time traveling a number of times, and this
Right.
is where there is this bit of when you're thinking about history, which I'm fascinated by. Like my favorite non-political podcast is The Rest is History.
They're brilliant.
There's a bit of me that kind of, when you're reading or looking, it's very difficult to kind of imagine what it was really like, and frankly, the smells. So there's that bit where, in some ways, we've come to go backwards would mean not having the creature comforts that we're kind of used to, and how would I manage with that? So in some ways, I'm kind of a bit reluctant to time travel, but I suppose it would be about seeing some of those, you know, really critical historical figures. Um, so, and just to get that kind of different perspective. Although I'm very conscious that history is always written from
From
the
the
side of
victor's perspective.
the winners or those prominent people. And actually, I'm just listening to podcasts about the French Revolution, and that focus on Marie Antoinette, but actually,
Mm.
what about the women who were involved in the revolution who would have come from really poverty backgrounds? I don't necessarily think I would like to live during the French Revolution though, or go back to then. I think it was probably a pretty dangerous time for a politician to be in. But something like post American Civil War, just in, I don't know. But in terms of time travel, I'm a bit anxious about it from a hot running water perspective.
That's fair enough. I live in the present. But can you share a memorable or funny moment from your time in Parliament?
Yeah, so this is one where I was doing, it was the night before, it was the night that Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid resigned from Boris
Right.
Johnson's government, and basically the week in which Boris Johnson resigned. So I was going across to Millbank, which is just across the road from Parliament, to do some media, because the story at the start of that week was about Chris Pincher, who'd been the
Right.
Deputy
Yeah,
Chief
yeah.
Whip of the Conservatives, who had been accused of inappropriate conduct. So I was speaking from a kind of whip perspective. And then by the time I got there, Sunak and Javid had resigned, so the story was moving quite quickly. So I was getting a little bit of makeup put on in Sky News, and the producer bustled in Jacob Rees-Mogg, who'd been sent out by Number 10 to defend the government. And Jacob ended up kneeling on the floor beside me while the makeup artist powdered his nose. And that's certainly the strangest and funniest thing that's happened to me in my time in Parliament, to have Jacob Rees-Mogg kneeling at my feet.
That is quite funny, actually.
Yeah, why he just didn't sit in the empty chair that was to my right, I have no idea.
If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be? And how would you use it to improve your community?
This sounds really prosaic, but to be able to build houses super fast would probably be it. Because if I think about what is the biggest issue in my constituency
Housing.
and the most complex casework that people get in touch with is about housing, North East Fife is sort of well known for St Andrews and its golf, and dare I say it, this assumption that it's a wealthy community, but in many aspects it's not, and lack of housing is a key issue. And I think that, good quality houses, properly insulated, that would, help people with cost of living challenges as well. So yeah, I don't know what you would call that superhero, but yeah, building houses very fast.
That's I think that's one of the best ones I've heard so far, actually. Have you got a book that you would recommend to a friend?
Oh, I'm a ferocious reader. I'm no sort of Nicola Sturgeon, who's very well known for, as former First Minister of Scotland, recommending books, etc. But a book, and I'm somebody who will reread books, and particularly fiction, on a semi-regular basis. But I'll choose one that's probably not so well known. It's a book called Scalagreg. I think it's even out of print. It's a fiction about a young woman with severe cerebral palsy
Right.
who hears these stories in sort of disabled communities about a mythical figure called the Scalagreg, and determines to find out the source of those stories. It's really good.
I'm going to pop that on my to-read list, actually. Who's it by?
Do you know, it's completely gone out my head who it's by, which is terrible because I've literally got two copies of it in the house. I've got one that I lend to people, and then I've got one that I keep for myself. because I can be slightly OCD about my books and people breaking spines and stuff. So William Horwood, in
Yeah,
fact,
I've
I've
just
got
looked
it
it up.
before having to look it out. William Horwood. Yeah.
I might buy that and give that a read.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, Wendy. It's been amazing to speak with you.
It's been great too, and really good to know that you've got me on as your first Scottish female MP. I mean, I was the first female to represent this seat, but we've obviously had a big turnover of MPs in Scotland at the most recent election. So I'm sure there'll be lots more brilliant women for you to speak to.
Listeners, join me next week when I'll be speaking to Eve Livingston.